Hello! So this will be the last stream for a few days to cause I have to go to work and stay in the city and whatnot. Got to make sure that our monitor is doing okay. We've got the stream live online. Yeah, it looks all good. I look all pretty. Sounds like we've got audio. Hello. Are we talking? Might help if I unmute it. Absolutely perfect. So last time when we were on, we polished this, or sanded and polished it to give the appearance of a smoother finish. And there's been a slight build-up of leftover polish, so we're going to clean that up a bit. It's going to get a few coats of Future Floor, which is a very nice glossy compound in a few layers. Very slow to dry, so it works out. And all this is just dishwashing detergent, though with the magic of the Q-tip, it's a part of the whole polishing process. So it's just removing and cleaning whatever is left behind and getting into all those hard to get nook and crannies with the Q-tip. So it's nothing too difficult, and I can already see that it's shining up a bit nicer. There is at the back of the neck a bit of a build-up. So we'll give that a nice, good polish. So we can see that the details popping, the decals popping. It's got more of a sheen. It only needs those two to 3 clear coats. Excuse me for a second. Only needs 2 to 3 more clear coats, and this is absolutely 100% ready for display. When we used the Q-tips as a point of polishing, I can already see that's quite nice. All it needs is, because it's all wet, that's why it's looking all quite nice. Once it's got that floor polish, then it's going to maintain and keep up that shine. So that will be very cool. Nice little drink. Now with the torso, same story. This one's not as bad. It didn't maintain much of the leftovers of the compound polish. Maybe a bit on the back. Yeah, I can see a bit of a white scum build-up. That's not a big deal. The back is not going to be visible. It's all about the front. So this is just polishing up the surface, getting it all wet, removing any final oils of the fingers or surface imperfections or whatever, dust off it finally. And then once it's got that final coat, there's not going to be any more work on it. So that will be the absolute final authority on the finish that will be perceived. Now, using the Q-tip for the compound polish was something that I just decided to do and pull out of my hat immediately without any thought. And it happened to be a grand success. So I was very happy how that worked out. So we'll just pick up the back and whatnot. Move that Q-tip around. And give it a bit of a soak and move around the water. The front's not too bad. The back is where there's all the trauma, so we'll let it soak from the back. Yeah, I think that's the way to do it. Just wipe a bit of excess off. And then we're laughing. Yeah, that's good. Polish that little bit of corner end. And yeah, that's the finish. That's the absolute perfect finish that wanted to be achieved. So that's very shiny and nice, not dull and weird. So we'll put that aside, and I'll throw that under a running tap. So detergent does a beautiful job. Quickly wipe down our table and throw some bits and pieces out. Put these away. So what we're going to do is we have a gun that is partially scratch build, airbrush, painted, everything. Looking very nice. It's not even going to really need much of a polish. I think I'll do it because I can see some fine scratches and problems and fingerprints and all sorts of goodies. As we're dealing with decals, it's only appropriate to clean down the surface, and we'll fill up our decal tray with a tad of water. This is the cleaning stream where we clean. Okay, beautiful. Not seeing any moisture pickup, so that's exactly what we want. Now, before we move on, I just need a bit of a photo. What do you mean the stream died? Offline? Offline my ass. Take a quick photo of the weathered look. Alright, cool. We are back in business. Let's get some decals. Got the super special decal box. And actually, okay, so the usual decals we're using is over there. Might as well get those out of. That would be that's our normal business. But we want some white decals for our gun. A V is pretty cool, but that's far too big. Or is it? It goes over. Nah, fuck it. Let's use it. That's awesome. Sort of like the sort of V you see on modern tanks and stuff. Like an Abrams from Desert Storm or whatnot. There's a bit of a yellow build-up on it. We'll just hope that that does not cause any issues. And what else? No, I've used this decal sheet before, so it shouldn't. There's a picture of a rabbit. That's kind of cool. British symbol. Nah. Keep it quite small. And we'll continue our hunt for some nice white decals. There's some stuff there that was left over from something. Oh, I thought that was empty. Now let's have a look at this one. They're white, but not quite appropriate in size and context. German markings, French markings. The French markings are something to be saved. Ooh, this is probably what we're looking for. Some Gundam warnings. And since that's a bit on the small side, we'll look for one more sheet. That's kind of humongous German sign writing. That's some cool stuff there. Not quite appropriate German armor markings. The old cranky head stuff. Police, Imperial Japan, Gundam decals, seed stuff. Those are cool. Must have bought that in Sydney a long time ago because that shop's out of business. We probably have enough. Just having a look in case anything really jumps out. My Little Pony decals. Ha! When we did that Pop Pony challenge a long time ago. Now those are just numbers. It's Polish. Very bottom here is pretty cool. There's some dank stuff here. I haven't looked at the very bottom in a long time. Okay, so we've definitely got enough now. So we'll just chop out what we actually need. Just check on the back of the Gundam. Very cool. I'll just pop that next to me. Okay, that's all sorted. Won't need too many for the gun, since we've already got the two V's out. You can hear that my cat's awake. So the white line is tempting to use. It can go along the railings or something. I think that will pass. Got little round symbols. That's pretty cool. Little strange lines and dots. I think we'll take that for sure. Some writing. Little squares. Maybe. Big writing. Letters. Skulls. Information. Great big dirty red warning thing, which could be good on like the power pack or the back or something. Underneath the scope or the front. Well, there's only one of them, so they can't be applied in a symmetrical fashion. Oh, no, it could go along the back here. Yeah, okay, cool. So we'll give that the go ahead. Circles, text, more text. And text. Okay, so that works out. Might not use everything, but this is enough stuff to get started, and we'll just keep the clear bag around. That pretty much leads everything else we removed. Not good unless it's super special. It just happens that the scrap decals just is enough what we need. Boy. So I'll just pack this all up away. We will entertain what else was on offer, in case there's just something really cool must have. Nothing really there, but it can live in the bag. Those two circles are kind of cool, so we'll take those. Yeah. Excellent. And we'll keep all these scrap loose pieces together or whatever. Very good. I'll put that aside too. Unlike the other bits and pieces, the gun potentially can be decaled in one session, if not two. So we've just placed water into our decal tray. This decal tray is an absolute lifesaver when it comes to removing the decals from the backing and applying them. I like to use a knife and a toothpick as well for picking them up, sliding them around, all that sort of business, and a tissue to pick up moisture. Before things get serious, we'll lay these out and take a quick photo. As this is a work in progress for the gun, what are you doing? Very good. So with the knife, we can immediately chuck in the warning sign on these two big V's. So let's have a quick inspection, and not sure if it's pre-cut or not, so we will not make that mistake. I'm not expecting much from these decals, so we will see how we go. I do need to quickly look up a picture of the correct use of these markings, so it can be a bit of a tribute. Some military people be like, "Ooh, it's facing the wrong way." Won't necessarily be the case. There we go. Okay, so the pointy bit is facing forward, and it's near the front of the tank. So sometimes it can be black and facing upwards. I always remembered it being at the back facing forwards. That's alright. References and research is always very important, especially if you're doing a tribute or something of the sorts. So we've just lubricated the rear a bit. Cat's a bit unhappy. There's probably someone here and she's out there. So we're not going to have too many on here. A couple on the butt, a couple here, a couple on the side. It's probably as far as we could get in the way of markings on this thing. Well, the red marking is probably ready. It's giving a bit of resistance. Though since it's mostly off the paper, we can almost just quickly transfer it across. Yay! And just straighten her out a bit. It looks alright there. Too easy, and there could be a little bit of writing either side and all of that jazz. I actually saw some decals that I could use for the butt, so I'll just have those slightly separated. Now, I'm starting to see some movement on these little bastards. You'll be very careful in case these are fragile. And slide them across by pinching it and pulling the paper back. There we go. Now for the first time on this project, that was unfortunate. So we'll quickly save that. And we do not want to tear. This is territory where we could tear decals. We'll put the knife down and use the less sharp. Cool. Now, this is a point where we're probably going to have to use decal set because it's not contouring the best. It's a very, very big decal. There's a lot of steps and ridges and whatnot, and it's just sort of just sitting there funny. Oh, it does look fairly effective, or it's doing the thing that I wanted it to do. It's got the look that I wanted. Whole Desert Storm Abrams thing. And we'll chuck it on the other side. And then, and you see, you just put your thumb on it, pull the paper back. Now I'll lift it on its side. That is how you roll with a very large decal. So pull it back so it's symmetrical, where we can look at the top, pull it apart. Looks pretty good. Both of them will have to be pulled up a bit. Excellent. So what we're going to do now is dry as much moisture as we can around this decal. And then we will be able to put the decal set down. So it's just only the decal and the dry surface, nothing else. And what the decal set is going to do is flatten the decal. It's going to sort of dissolve it a bit, make it all wrinkly and weird and disturbed. And it's going to try to make it contour as well to the surface as possible, like it's painted. Now, we're very lucky with Gundams. We use very small decals. The biggest decal will be a few mil by a few mil, which would be a logo or something, and the rest is just clear text. For something like this, and it's going around such complex detail as a military kit, it gives off a lot more trouble. So we'll go get the decal set now. As a Gundam modeler, or any type of modeler, you won't be using a lot of decal set. Okay, just a quick check on these guys. Just a quick rinse. So just rinsing these out a bit. Then we shall mount and put away, and I'll get decal set at the same time. So we got some Mr. Mark softer. Alright. Alright. So we've got some Mr. Mark softer here. And it's just a clear odorless liquid. The mildest of a mild, almost acid-like solvent. I've had this for such a stupid amount of years, it's not funny. And you just brush on the whole decal nice and gently as to not agitate it and make it move around. And you can already see it flattening a bit. Now what's going to happen is you don't want to put it on too much or too thickly, because it might activate the paint and cause problems, especially acrylic. But what you might see is it may react and start to bubble, wrinkle up and all that. Don't mess with it, leave it. If it dries, and it dries completely all wrinkled and weird, just apply it again. Okay. I'm putting a healthy dose because it's an old decal. It's got some edges that I want it to contour around. Let's see if it's going to do what I'm talking about it's going to do. Sometimes it doesn't get all wrinkly. It just magnetizes itself to the surface really, really nicely. And it looks like this one doesn't want to get all wrinkly and weird. Though it is sticking to the surface very, very nicely. Just slightly move it so some of it gets... oh shit, I stuck a hole into it. Fuck. That sucks. I get a dab of white paint and fix that later, but that sucks. The edge of it's gotten a bit wrinkly, but yeah, it sort of really softens it and weakens it quite a bit. So let's not fuck with this any further than we have to. Just need to pull it back a bit because I moved it a bit too much. So moving around also potentially affects the paint. So that's fine. That's done. Not touching that no more. That's going to need a spot of paint, unfortunately, to recover and fix the whole thing. And my stream seems to be spurging out for some bizarre reason. Don't know about that. It's probably laggy as fuck or something. Chuck these tissues out. Excess decal paper and water. And we'll keep on moving forward by doing the stock decals. So I found some nice letter decals for the stock. Oh, I don't know why I picked that up. That's a bit weird. So this is a crazy amount of text we can wrap around the stock. It should give us an interesting effect. I wish I remembered what decal set this came from. This could come in handy in the future, though. We've got a Wave X decal there, so most likely it could have been something that I bought from in Japan. I've just noticed that we've got some that's joined us. Hello, welcome to the stream. We are decaling the Providence Gundam. Got a large scratch-built rifle, so we're pretty much working and having a bit of a play with that. So that's all nicely chopped up. We'll chuck them in the water and we'll plan out the rest of the decals for the stock. The gun is something that the eye catches, a lot like the torso and the head. When you see, when you're staring down the barrel of a gun, the thing that you notice is whoever's holding it and the fear behind that and what they're exactly holding. So we could use these 4 bits of text for the armpit rest, and we just need a little square for the top bit there, and 2 tiny decals. These work. So we'll chop those out. I don't know how though, this decal has gotten a slightly moistery. It's going to be important that it gets used up sooner rather than later. So once we get some of the stock ones on, we better start using it up. So I'll get chopping. And find spots to put it all over our Gundam. Or Gundam's gun, that is. And we'll just scatter around some random ass places. And then we'll keep going with our plan regarding the stock. Oi, don't stick to my fingers. Chop it a few more times. One more time. There we go. I was just thinking, I thought I had a lot more decals than what I had. 2 of them stuck to my fingers. So I'll move these away slightly. Remembering where everything goes. Now these are wet and ready. So we'll chuck a little bit of moisture down the 2 sides of the stock. Pick up the 2 fattest ones with our knife on the finger, and then we shall pick it up and we can just slide it. This decal's kind of too big and is struggling slightly. Might not fit on the finger. There we go. Nice and easy. And we'll get the writing orientation right. And it's stuck perfectly well to the back of the stock. So we've got a whole bunch of writing right there. And as it's not swimming around, moving around, causing us any trouble, a bit of tissue, we'll just soak up the extra water. And that's looking a bit neat. Put it on the edge, so we've got another decal to put right next to it. For that, we'll have a look, and we can see that the big decal we put on is starting to get a bit wrinkly, so the decal set is working. We can also see that dreadful hole that's been applied. Now for the very long decal. Now this one's a tad too long for my finger to adapt to, so we're just going to move it so it's ever so slightly to the edge or over. Put the paper there, and we'll do the drag and pull technique. There. And that can be slightly adjusted further. And that's just the right amount of decal coverage that's perfectly working. And I've just noticed that there is an empty blank space there that something could go there that I didn't consider, though. Just how close is that going to be? It's going to be noticeable. Won't be too noticeable, so don't know if I shall bother. So today on the YouTube channel, I've got an upload, well, it's already uploaded, titled and organized. It's just a fact of when it's scheduled to go live. We have a video about an airbrush review, which is the U-Star 0.3 double action airbrush. That is scheduled to appear at exactly noon. And it goes for about 15-16 minutes. Now, the interesting thing I found is a lot of the stuff that U-Cell packages and sells mirrors what Tamiya does. So U-Star is in Taiwan, Tamiya is in Japan. Evidently, they're not connected or have anything to do with each other, though U-Star definitely does attempt to capitalize in their prestige and whatnot. Now, Tamiya does not manufacture everything themselves. They do have a paint line and all sorts of goodies, but they also have an airbrush line. And the majority of their airbrushes, except for that weird plastic one, is made by Sparmax, and that's a premium airbrush manufacturer from Taiwan. So Tamiya has been utilizing their old airbrushes, the DH103 model, and selling it for an absolute fortune and decent upmark, which is ever so slightly unsavory. Alright, doing a tricky transfer. When I purchased, sorry, I didn't purchase. When I was given the U-Star airbrush to review, immediately by appearance, it looked like it was just another Hyacinth, a mainland Chinese produced airbrush, which isn't a bad thing. It's a good airbrush, though you could probably find it for anywhere between $10 to $30. Doesn't really justify a $50 to $100 price tag. Because the Sparmax and Hyacinth are so similar. In the previous life, they all stem from the original first design airbrush from way back. Though, Sparmax is just a little tighter, has a better fit, and is just slightly a better airbrush, but survives and works for a lot longer. The first airbrush I ever had was a DH103 from Sparmax. Pardon me. And that has served me and survived me well for a very, very, very long time. And it's a little cheaper than what's offered by Sparmax. It's a little cheaper than what's offered by Tamiya, or a lot cheaper if you're buying it online. And if you've got a decent amount of cash to splash to get an airbrush, it just seems to be the right choice. A lot of I talked about this in my last stream. There's a poll put up that some chap, God knows where in the world, wanted to buy an airbrush, where to look, he knew absolutely nothing. And I find sometimes the biggest problem with the largest Gundam groups is people don't really stick or form to an opinion of their own. They like to parrot what they hear from the elitists or older modelers or anyone who has an opinion of their own that's worth anything. And experience says that a lot of people have done very well with Iwata airbrushes. And about 10, 20 years ago, they were the best airbrushes you could buy on the market. Unfortunately, they've suffered the issue of they've been using producing the same thing over and over, year after year, and there's just no innovation, change, or improvement. The whole airbrush world has left them behind. China's working with the whole Hysing thing. About 10 years ago, what they were producing was complete garbage. It's improved and the tolerances started getting a bit tighter and things have started spraying just a little bit better. And now they're rolling with a really good product. Okay, so I'm trying to apply a decal right at the tip here, and it's just tending to give me a little bit of an issue. Alright, so I got that there. And obviously I had to lose my toothpick. So there we go. That got applied into a nice little corner. This was one that got a bit damp, and I'm worried it was going to be ruined before I could use it. And it managed to just be saved. So these decals are starting to move off their paper. It's time to pull the tray up. And it can be used at its leisure. So this should just pick up from my finger. And it lands on some dry decals. Fuck. So these decals will have to be used next. That is bad luck. I've applied a few hundred decals over the past week and I haven't done that yet. There we go. I need to consider where I put the dry stuff that I'm not going to use for a while. So I'll just tap that up a bit. Now, I thought I'd be a bit ambitious and just smash everything this morning, though that probably won't be the truth of it. Just edge that stuff right to the top, just picking it up. So the point of the decals on these machines, you could imagine that when a Gundam and its weapons and accessories sitting in its hangar, or it's gone out to combat, or you're working it on space, or the pilot's manipulating it, or whatever's happening, ground, space, whatever. It's a mechanical device, and it's very similar to how a tank or an aircraft sorts out and whatnot. You've got mechanics, engineers, and the pilot that does maintenance and works on it, which we've seen it in the show. So when they're removing parts and they're adding fuels and energy and all these bits and pieces, they get little bits of warning and tips as each machine is different. It might be new on the production line. You haven't had a chance to read the manual. It just gives you warning like, hey, you know, be careful if you're standing on this panel. It's loose as fuck, or remove this and add fuel, or don't stand here because the feet's going to move and bloody crush you. So it's got little tips and tricks like that, where if you're around a real aircraft, which you can see pictures on the internet, it's got things like warning, don't stand here when takeoff occurs, and fueling, highly flammable, and this is dangerous, and that's to take notice. And the interesting things with a certain period of time, the American aircraft would have multiple signs. One sign would say, attention, hazardous, and another sign directly under it would be written in Spanish. So you would have dual languages on it. So that's the reason why a machine would have markings, and then the larger markings would be, the unit number and the squadron logo and what country it belongs to and all that sort of stuff. So its allies won't shoot it down, but the enemies can also identify it. Okay. Pick up that marking, and I probably should have thought about where it was going, and I'm just going to chuck it there. Doesn't want to move, so we will lubricate the surface ever so slightly and move it across. So yeah, that's pretty much the story of why you would have decals on a machine. But when we're painting, assembling, designing, customizing our Gundams, everything we do may not necessarily tell a story of its technical aspects of or what it's done in the show, or things that are just coming out of our own sick little fantasies or imaginations. Though how things can look visually interesting, that your model starts to look something like an actual robot coming out of canon, or a stylized thing that has the cool factor, the how it's going to stand out against other models that's competing in social media on the timeline when you're scrolling through pictures of model after model after model. Sometimes it's very old models that's won past competitions. It's been shared around 100 times till older people are bored, or newer stuff that's just really, really cool. What you have to do is you have to put enough work and detail and attention and a color scheme and all that your work is going to stand out from the torrent of everything else that's being posted up there. So it's a combination of workmanship, complexity of the kit, the rarity and age of the kit, or if it's one of the common really popular ones, color modulation, the color scheme, if it's camouflaged, not camouflaged, and the decals. Now, you put a few large decals, squadron number, squadron logo, and a few warning things. Though if you put a lot of the text-based warning stuff, you're able to strategically place it around where you can draw the eye. You can either do that with shading, you can do that with hand painting, you can do that with dry brushing. Though, if let's say you don't quite have the skills to apply a lot of skill in painting and do all the eye drawing and whatnot, or weathering, you can do that with decals. And decals are extremely easy to apply if it's the sticker ones or the water slides, which they can be a bit tricky, though with constant practice, one can learn them in a fairly short period of time. And to get a lot of attention from good model work, applying a lot of decals in a strategic fashion can get that attention that's desirable, and changing the color so it's a little different from canon, or it's an added a box canon anime look or manga look or whatever. Utilizing spray cans can change that color just right. I had an old friend who used to do Gundam with me a long time ago, Vietnamese fella named Trong. And his hand painting and rattle canning was just absolutely spot on. He just had the knack for color theory and just choosing the right colors. And he did a master grade Steins Gundam, which is kind of like just Sinanju, but it's all white and stuff. And he used just the right tones of grey on different parts and assembled it that it just looked like an absolute masterpiece from the Gunpla Builders World Cup. And if you got corresponding coloured decals and put them in the little edges of detail and panels and whatnot, panel line the thing, it would have been Gunpla Builders World Cup champion model. That would have been very, very, very cool. Didn't work out that way. The guy's naturally very artistic and very, very talented. He found his calling, and that was cosplay photography. And he also set up an anime attaché car. So he's been driving around this like Subaru or something, and it's got this whole decal scheme of one of the Can College ships, and another one was Neon Genesis. The car appeared on a couple of my videos in the background somewhere, and I posted it 1 or 2 times on Facebook. So anyone that's really keen and seeing 100% of my content would know about it. Though anyone who sort of wanders around the internet can definitely find it somewhere. So my goal is from tip to tip to tip, and all the raised areas, you put small white written or pointy or logo-y warning decals. It just gives the play somewhere for the eyes to draw and look at, and it's just interesting to see. Now, you can do the decal cluster look and just have decals absolutely everywhere, covering your model. And that is really, really, really cool. But the problem is the decal's getting very close, your fingers touching the model, you're handling the model, and if you put too many decals on at a time, you're moving, disturbing, and damaging other decals. And there is a way to get around that. And that's just simple patience. If you were to wait and apply just a few decals that you can comfortably get to a few corners that you imagine that look good and whatnot, and when you're done, you top coat it, you put it away, and you don't touch it for a day. The next day you jump on that project again, you're ready to put on more decals. Okay, so that's on. Do I put it in that panel? No, I'll put it directly under the panel, so it's just next to a bit of detail that's interesting. There's more detail next to a detail. Cool. So you can see that this is the most forward tip. There's a decal here. There's a tip there, decal here. There's the bottom of this tip near this trigger. There's a decal there. And you put one at each corner, a big one somewhere in the middle, off center. Don't have it too symmetrical where it's corner, 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 corner. Move them around slightly just to break up the symmetry of a geometrical shape. Since it's if it starts to form patterns, the eye ignores patterns. But when it sort of just breaks slightly, it's very, very interesting to look at. And that's all going down decal theory. There's a lot of interesting things that I say, that I do, whatnot. So you jump on stream and you like what you're seeing, you like what you're hearing, and you kind of wish you caught it earlier, or you want to listen to more because I'm only on for a little while and you're stuck and bored for the next God knows how many hours. YouTube channel, PhD Manchild on YouTube. Little kept secret, sort of my play around, second screw around channel. I used to do some anime reviews and other stuff. Some of it's a bit cringy, fun. I chuck all my stream videos there to be used as a resource or as just a form of archiving. So if you want to see the other streams and what I demonstrate, show, and some of the weirder things that I do, that's not a bad source to look at. Now, this thing is it's a very wide surface. There's a lot of corners. There's a lot of detail. There's a lot of sections. You will spend an enormous amount of time if you want to hit up something like this. Though, if you consider it to be quite a serious build and it's going in for a competition, or it's going to be your magnum opus for the year or a period of time, big expensive kit, you're working on a giant $800 resin kit or something, and you're giving it the full treatment, that will be the piece of work you'll be known for when people Google, look around looking for a certain kit. So if you want to get your name out there, you're building a blog or a channel or something, pick a kit you really like, something that a lot of people haven't worked on, that's not a fucking Suzabi. And if you just put a mountain of work in it, you do little modifications, you buy some aftermarket stuff, you paint it with the most expensive and finest paint you can and do a candy or shading or whatever, and then you just plethora it with decals. That's a thing that people stop and look at and will appear in search engines and all that sort of jazz. That's the fun thing. That's the bit of work that you'll be known for. And it could be a couple of rewards that could be reaped once you start getting a bit of attention online, and a lot of it could be quite fun, to tell the truth. Now, when I've done some of my earlier streams and I've watched some other Gundam modelers stream, I sort of want to be a little more entertaining and fun and whatnot, and not as much dead airtime. So, I got coached by a friend who's been a Twitch streamer since day one, and he's one of these professionals, and he travels the world and does commentating for the big esports and all these crazy things. I don't 100% understand exactly what he does. He gave me a few tips when I jumped on this platform, and unfortunately, I'm on an immediate disadvantage as Twitch is designed as a video game platform where people play games, and a lot of airtime can be filled with cutscenes, loading scenes, the noises and visuals of the video game are playing. When you're looking at a cutting mat, and, my lovely, lovely bearded morning face, when I stop talking, the magic stops, and people get very bored and want to move away to something that's a lot more appealing from the background noise and video and all that of a video game. Though the advantage is, I suppose, is everything you hear I own, so there's no copyright complaint or any of that sort of thing. I'm the owner of my own content, I suppose, so I won't be fighting anything in the future. Alright, so these are the decals that we sort of kind of got semi-damaged. They're nice and wet and ready to transfer. I'm not 100% ready. I said it already, but it wasn't. It's not floating nicely across the paper and straight onto my finger. Excuse me. So yeah, I was watching other streams, and when they're removing nubs and they're doing a tedious job for a long period of time, they start singing and repeating themselves, and I found I did the same thing. Removing nub, nub removal. They just say the same thing every time you do it to another part, and that could get a bit circular for people who've been watching for a long time. So I've decided, as you know, what I do every day or a couple of times a day, you finger through social media and you see some interesting debates and conversations and whatnot. And it's a lot of interesting things to talk about, but you just can't bring it up from the top of your head or recall it when there's just dead space on your stream. So I'm coming into the habit of when I do my Q&As and vlogs and stuff, write myself up a bit of a list. So some interesting things that I came across and things I need to address on my channel and other things and news and all that fun stuff. Okay, so now it should have soaked through the paper long enough. And the story with Decals is you've got a thin layer of plastic sitting on paper. This plastic has a special glue underneath it that activates when wet and dries hardens or sticks when dry. The problem with that is it can only get wet and dry a certain amount of times, and then it's absolutely utterly useless. Well, that kind of looked pretty good there. Yeah, that looks awesome. So you've got that plastic, but it's clear plastic. It's no good. There's nothing on it. And it goes through either a screen printing process for the high quality, really nice decals, or a laser or inkjet printing process for the cheaper monotone colors and whatnot. That transferred off nicely. So the problem is when you got ink sitting on plastic, it doesn't want to go anywhere, doesn't want to do anything. The ink will just immediately slide off. So there's a film that goes on top of it to protect it from the process of being manhandled. Now, you cut it out, and it's the size of that plastic that you're playing with, not what's printed on. So the really clever decal manufacturers have the plastic cut to the size of the inked area, where custom or cheap decals is just a whole sheet, and you need to physically cut around the printed area. This is the difference between pre-cut and just a sheet of decal paper. There's just something to be mindful of when you don't have a lot of experience and you're playing around with decals. Okay, so just right behind the butt, and it's just a little extra funny corner. So when you look at it one direction, you see some detail, and you change your perspective slightly, you see slightly different amount of detail, and it's almost a complete different story. That's the sort of thing I'm talking about when you're just adding detail upon detail upon detail, and you just make it more rich and interesting to look at. You're not relying off the aesthetics of the kit and what's already there. When you pick up something that exists, like a trace drawing or a kit or something, and you're only repainting it, that's not really art. You're working with something that someone else has already created and improving on it. That's something like an artisan, where you get a material and you just do your magic on it, which can be respected as much as art as well. Though it's just a completely different thing. When you get a bunch of plastic and clay and 1,000 kits and you start chopping a bunch of things and putting it together in your own assortment, that's when we're starting to get into the plastic art realm. So we'll put these little decals on the square in. So we will finish the stock with these next 5 or so decals. Now, as I was talking about dead space, I'm just about to hit or going into circular logic, or talking about exactly what I'm visually doing here, which is obvious for anyone that's been watching for any period of time. We shall look at the time first. Stick around here for an hour and a bit longer. The Gunpla Builders World Cup. Now, it's something that I'm not too happy with at the moment. I had a bad experience last year when I entered, that the rules for the Australian heat changed a month or so out before the actual event. So people who worked on their models put on anything that's considered illegal is practically instantly disqualified. And how the disqualification process works is they don't tell you. The judge walks past, looks at the models and go, I'm not considering this batch of models because they're not following the set of rules. And 3D printing was celebrated and okay for a number of years. And then one year, it's just simply Japan said, no, but the other countries, yeah, and we'll give them a chance to, finish up, and next year it's going to be a no. And then they suddenly change their name and go, no, all countries are going to follow the Japanese rules. And that absolutely bummed me out. And once I went to the event, I went to the event with multiple models. And they were my friends and club that I was representing. And details were lost of one of the people that was entering. His model wasn't too crash hot, but it was important for the model to be entered. It was going to cause all sorts of problems. We were waiting for hours and hours and hours to get to the event. I allowed other people to go ahead of me, young kids and families and people that are unwell and whatnot. So at the very end, and the hall is about to close, I'm tired, I'm angry. And it's sort of like, now we lost the details. And it's sort of like, well, fuck. I'll enter my friend's model under my details, and there's a little breakage on my model that I didn't have time to repair. So I forfeited out, which, there's no point entering. I was told I was allowed to bring it, though I decided not to put it on the table. No one really noticed it, but that wasn't a big deal. And that just led to a very, very shitty weekend. Another friend got upset, and yeah, that just spiraled further out of control as a group that I was a part of, and eventually I am not a member of the group no more. Yeah, so the Gunpla Builders World Cup is it's just a complete write-off negative experience for me. Though it's important to me that other people do not go through the same thing. And I want to keep a very close eye out on Bandai, the rules, the events, all that sort of thing for any dodginess. Realistically, in the past, it's been the same rules every year as a very simple competition, and more rules got plopped on top of each other because, in the end, it is a competition of the self promotion of the Bandai product. And they've been putting things in there to cover their own ass and for conditions that their winners needs to meet to claim all the prizes and whatnot. So it's gotten more corporate, and there's just a ton of information, the rules that are just not relevant for everyone and only for the person that wins, which is important to read, but that can be separated from the rules for people who are serious and people that are casual. But there's just things about intellectual property. If you're drawing inspiration or themes or something from another body of work, will get you instantly disqualified, but it's not clear on it. Mr. Kawaguchi has talked about it at functions and panels and stuff, though that's not exactly translated to all languages and made available to everybody. Only people who pay attention, listen, and wish to learn more. So you've got the minimalist amounts of information that makes no sense and that's poorly translated, and then you've got rules that are almost changed quite often. And that just leads to a very, very strange experience. A lot of people just enter and they're having fun and it's all good. And that's not a big deal. Put a model in, it gets looked at, it doesn't get looked at, it wins, it doesn't win, you're having fun. And you're there for your friends and other modelers and all that sort of thing. But you still have a few people that wish to win. And they've got an agenda and all that. And they're the people that are not exactly being treated well because Bandai is looking for the best model to slap on a magazine and sell more models. And other people have a goal of, building a rapport or YouTube channel or a Twitch thing or selling their own line or promoting a shop or something. And they want to get as much attention as they humanly can. Anyway, I'm just going to excuse myself for a few minutes after I apply this last decal. And I'm going to take a 5-minute break. We'll stick around for one more hour, and that will be the end of our session. So I'll just get on there. So going to the final point that I was talking about, what I wish to do is a video and a post to, get around there of looking at the rules and just making sense of it, of how you could use it to your advantage to get the upper hand and a fair chance of placing and the most out of the competition as humanly possible. I'll be back. Okay, we're back. Sorry for the wait. Just got to refill the beverage, go to loo, all that sort of thing. Family member woke up and heading out to work. And got to keep slapping decals on this thing, I suppose. So we'll have 4 more warning decals. And we'll just show it off on the stock. So we've got a bit of writing on the sides there as well. I suppose I could have put something on the top. I might do that at the next session. And there's going to be some on the side. So on the top, we may do that. So I might need one more session of decaling. And then the stock is finished. It's sort of a stock, sort of. I'm not very familiar with gun terminologies and whatnot. It's a retractable thing, goes under your armpit and you hold it and shoot and whatever. I've got a sci-fi gun and I got parts from a real gun and plopped it all together, which is actually one of the points on my sheet. Now I'm doing the whole salt mine hobby shop thing, and I'm fundraising money for the injection molding machine project, which is something I should mention during every single stream. Getting molds milled or specialty 3D printed out of steel to inject plastic into to make runners and my model kits and whatnot. And it's something I'm going to sell on the open market in the future and whatnot. So that's something that I'm working on, and that's happening on the side. So to get the money to get all of this expensive equipment and get the molds made and the plastic and all that jazz, The money needs to come out of somewhere, and I don't want it out of my pocket in case it fails and I'm stuck with all this equipment. So I've been selling secondhand models, tools, new models that no one else really sells and sources. And one of the things in my range is the 4D 1/6 scale rifles. And the platform I do it on is on Facebook because there's no fees. It's you do your own advertisements and it costs you nothing. Everything goes back to you. The lower the cost, the better, really. And Facebook has been giving me a lot of trouble recently because they think I'm selling real firearms because they're named after real firearms. And I've appealed it a couple of times and they won't let me appeal anymore. And just because it's like a firearm, they don't like it. And that's been giving me a lot of trouble. You can post about firearms, but you can't do a sales post selling firearms. But there's nothing about doing a normal post and saying it's for sale anyway. So that's what I'll have to do. But that's been giving me a lot of issues. I'm getting in trouble with some communities and stuff. I've been getting flagged a lot. And this leads me that I need to diversify my content a lot. I do all my posting on Facebook and on YouTube. And YouTube's pretty fun. I've been there for a long time. They look after me. I've never really gotten in trouble with copyright or anything else. I've never lost a channel, although I remember Gundam AA Reviews did on the ground of copyright and using clips out of anime and music and stuff for his opening. And this is the point where partnership was never considered by any of the YouTubers because the goals to get partnered is 10,000 subscribers and all these crazy restrictions that we thought we may as well have fun. We're never going to make it. And eventually he had something like 100 videos of these reviewed snap kits, and the copyright owner of Gundam Sunrise and all that, who owned all that music, just cracked the shits and took his whole channel down. And it's a case of 3 strikes, you're out. But if you've got 100 videos and you get 100 strikes, that is instant death to your channel. And if they change the rules after a while, and 100 of those videos fit those rules, your channel is in a lot of trouble. And you never know when the rules are going to change. And YouTube is changing a lot. They're tightening up the whole partnership program. You have to meet certain requirements just to keep it. People who talk about certain things are being demonetized, or their video or particular videos are not entitled for monetization. And you just never know that one day in the far future, something you've done a long time ago that's just out in the ether is suddenly not okay, and you lose it all. And I suppose it made me realize if I want to keep my presence out there, I need to have pictures of my finished work as well as my videos on more than one platform. So at the moment, what I'm doing is I'm backing up all the metadata for my videos, which is the tags, the titles, the playlists, all that sort of thing. And I'm going to mirror all the videos on a safer platform that may be watched, may not be watched. But all the pictures of my builds and some of the work in progresses got all wiped out on Facebook due to being flagged for sexual content and hate speech and all sorts of things that was attached to my private accounts. Now, Facebook doesn't like you having multiple accounts. It likes you to have one private account and everything's connected to that private account. So if your private account or one of your public accounts done the wrong thing, everything you have, every group you solo administer, all the pages, everything you've done suddenly just goes, and it's a one strike, you're out deal on Facebook, and there's no way of appealing or getting out of it. I got I got mass attacked or mass flagged on Facebook out of a falling out with some local people and a club. And that just wiped out everything I had and worked hard for. We're talking about tens of thousands of photos. Every competition I went to, I documented everything. All the Gundam events, all the model competitions, all the meets, everything that had to do with Melbourne and Australian Gundam community was all documented that I attended, saw, had stuff passed on to. And Facebook removed all of that. And all that led to was the local community being more frustrated, more angry, and leading to more flagging. So since I've had one flagged and deleted account and started another account of the same name, Facebook's keeping a very close eye on me. So any wrong step and I'm locked out of my account for 2 days. Just anything small. I might have shared something one too many times, tagged one too many people into a post, and then bang, I'm locked out. And this whole gun thing is just so that I can't really sell it and have to find loopholes, but at the same time not to upset Facebook to the point of being locked out where that's affecting my fundraising as well as promotion and sharing stuff and tutorials and helping and all that sort of thing. So that's sort of the bind I've been in for a while. I was doing very well, and then suddenly things are starting to come to a screeching halt. Not getting as many sales, not getting as many views, and I'm at the point where this all happened around November, and it just digressed and fell apart slowly and slowly, getting worse to about February. And it's now that I'm starting to bounce up and improve things again. And one of them is re-getting back to Twitch. I tried Twitch early last year and again mid last year, and it was all right, but I just didn't have time because I was working on community stuff in the club and other bits and pieces. But after I got a lot of free time freed up after being excluded from the Australian Gundam modelling scene, I'm able to spend a lot more time on this Twitch thing, and there's a lot more resources and ways to promote and put video up and all sorts of other things. It's worth a second go now, and now there's actually a really decent modelling and gunpla scene on Twitch now. There's people that are watching, as well as people that are putting stuff out there. And it's better to be a part of the masses than to be the first one doing it. So very happy to be on this platform, and it's doing good things where I'm working, talking, and sharing some cool stuff, I suppose. So after all that is said and done, the stock is done. Now I want to put 2 more decals, so when you're looking up, you can see stuff that's gone across there. But looking at the side, it's very cool. Maybe something circular in that circular point there. So we'll put that there. Maybe 4 more decals and that's finished. We'll keep working on the big boy, the main body. And there's a lot of small things. If you look at it, you could easily miss it. But when there's a build-up of it, and there's a lot of it, it's going to be a lot more noticeable. So we'll put a few more larger decals and smaller decals on the big guy. And then we will stop so we're not putting decals upon decals and causing damage. And yeah, top coat it, and we'll probably put a couple of decals on something else, or we'll cut this short. No, we could be here for another hour, so we'll see how many decals we can plaster on this, and we'll stop there. I won't work on the gold things today, but at least getting some stuff on the rifle is of a big help. At the bottom, because it's going to be held like that, I can't really put any decals at the bottom. And at the top, there's not a lot of space, so we can't put much on the top. So we'll put 1 decal on that rail there at least. And I've also got a little top coating I need to do before I get out of here. But that will be about a 10-minute job. So I've got some big decals here. So we'll chop them up. And we'll chop up some solid white blocks. And we'll play with those first. Big decals are always fun, and just finding a centralized point and plastering it on and just adding up to the design and the whole process. I might put 1 decal at the bottom and 1 decal at the top, but it might have to be a thin decal, and I'm sort of seeing a spot where I can do that. So we'll cut these 2 small ones, and we'll have those prepared. And we'll cut 2 circular ones, because I saw a cool spot for circular decals. And it'll be these 2. So those 2 will be done, and then we will cut up and deliver the 2 larger decals. Apology, it's quite nippy. It was meant to be a warm summer style day today, and it's just really cold, overcasty, misty day, which I thought would have been the case because it was very overcasty and just this terrible fog, smog in the city. After I did last night's stream and then headed straight to work, came home, did some bits and pieces, slept. I was thinking about doing the midnight stream, sleep a bit, stream, and sleep some more. But I decided to have a solid good night's sleep and stream in the morning. Morning streaming is not ideal. You don't have the most accessible to an audience, though you're fully rested, so it doesn't matter. And it's sort of just fun doing it at different times of the day. Yesterday I had a very early morning day shift. Tonight I'm working a night shift, though I need to do some deliveries and other things. I've got some items I need to dispatch for the salt mines, a little bit of an account stuff to do, mass upload stuff off the camera for video stuff, and then head off to work. And I'll have a little time at work because at work there's just not a lot to do of night. It's monitoring of equipment and sitting back, able to do editing and some other bits and pieces. So I've just saw a spot that I could put some big decals. So that's thought I lost the decal, but no, it's just so small it wasn't noticeable. Oh, we get a bit of lag going on, but I think that's just only my stream or my view of the stream, not necessarily the actual stream itself. So let that all reset and whatnot. I'll just keep an eye if it's not getting all jerky and weird and stuff. Now, I talked a lot about my fundraising and my salt mining and all that sort of stuff, and I want to keep things very up forward, straight, transparent with the sort of the money I'm handling and all the work I'm doing. The most important thing of fundraising the money for the project is each dollar I earn, I don't want to just get money for nothing. I want that money to benefit someone else. So they're getting tools or a cheap kit or a part or something that benefits the hobby to them. And not just crying, complaining, and begging for money. Okay, so just got a circular little decal right there. So this Friday night, there's the Nunawading Wargaming Association are having their big wargaming and swap and sell night, where scale modelling, wargaming groups, all that sort of stuff come together in a foyer. It used to be a foyer in the church, now it's a main hall. Set up a table and just sell stuff that benefits wargamers. I've got a bit of a catalogue now, so I've got a bit to offer, and I picked up a ton of hat 72nd figures that date around the Napoleonic 100-year war, 30-year war, Civil War, World War I type stuff, which is of interest to those guys. So I've got a huge, almost garbage bag of kits that I bought off some chap. Some 72nd bits and pieces, some cheaper 72nd bits and pieces, and a ton of tools, airbrushes, the small King Max compressors. Set up a table and display all of those bits and pieces, and see if I can net a couple of $100. For last month and this month, generally everything that's netted, the total net, is going to be cut in half. Half of the net is going to go to restocking the essentials, because I've got Model Expo coming up, and that's going to be a big one for the salt mines. Need to have more stock for tools and stuff, and just as much as I can get my hands on to turn over for such a big event. Though I'm paying $500 for 4 tables and trading for 3 days. I want to make sure that I've got enough of all the tools, and if there's a certain tool that just gels right for people, there's enough to go around for everybody. Finally got that decal down. So I want to liquidate and cut down things and not have as many models. So last month, this month, all the takings, which should be over $1,000, half goes straight in the pot for the injection molding machine. Half is for important restock. I need to get more aluminium airbrushes, more airbrush parts, some new tools and bits and pieces, and be fully stocked for that. And after that month, for how many months it takes, 100% of everything is just going towards the cause. Okay, so we'll just lubricate down here slightly. And separate this bottom decal out. And I'm just going to keep saving and saving and saving. Doesn't matter how much I whittle everything down, wipe everything out. I'll just keep selling until I get that 3 and a bit grand that's needed to start buying that machine and getting the molds made. And I could rebuild. Well, I don't want to be selling as many secondhand kits. So what secondhand kits go, that's fine. That's cool. I've got a ton of them. And there's actually enough secondhand kits. If I'm only selling secondhand kits, if I sell the lot, that's already more than enough money. So it's the fact that if people want these secondhand kits or not. And secondly, just can't list them as efficiently because of the restrictions and the weirdness that's happening by Facebook. So that's also a big drama. So there's a large space that I could put a large decal there. So I might. Where was that collective of decals that I put? There it is. So underneath, I want to put a largish decal, be it a number or a letter or something. So I'll have a quick look what I've got. Let's see what we could do. AU is and Zeta and all that sort of stuff is highly inappropriate. That's all not too small. Feather's no good. A skull's no good. A letter could be good. We can put like the number 1 underneath it. Or number 0. 0. Yeah, go for 0. That would be very cool. And I see a decal at the very bottom. It's absolutely perfect. So we'll pull that out and we can cover the 2 bottom areas and do something cool. Alright, so yeah, that's my thoughts regarding Friday. So I'm very excited. About 4 or 5 hours I'll be trading full portable hobby shop style. And a lot of these events I've done is a lot of fun. I've already done one around February, which was a Comic Expo. And that's more of a comic thing. People selling toys of like Avengers and Marvel and Star Wars and all that sort of stuff. There's like a tiny, glint of an interest in anime bits and pieces. Though I went there showing off my models. I think I had like 1 or 2 Star Wars miniatures, a really big Terminator thing that was metal that I was selling for well over $100. I did a commission for someone. Oh, what you decaling? I am decaling my master grade Providence. though I'm only working on the rifle. So this is the big Providence rifle, which is not immediately recognizable as it's been heavily kit bashed and modified. I've chopped up a 4D machine gun rifle and added detail because it's a very boring gun, and I've chopped up the existing gun and made it a lot more mechanical looking. And there's also a bit of a stock that goes on the back. So this is quite a detailed yet menacing gun. There is a lot of decals on the Providence, so I wanted to match the decal scheme on the gun as well. And there's going to be that many decals on it. There's going to be decals on top of decals, so I'm going to have to apply a clear coat, let that dry, and then add more. I'm going to start on my turn red ashtray master grade tomorrow. Maybe. Absolutely sweet, man. That's going to work out pretty well, I suppose. A lot of the whole ashtray thing. It's sort of the whole like basic frame and out of armor, and it's all the same robot. But the direction that each color of each of the frames that went into, and the 1,000 variations of the red frame and whatnot, is very fascinating. Probably with the whole Gundam ashtrays, probably one of the very, very rare few mangas I've actually read ever. And God, that was something like 10 years ago before I even started the whole YouTube channel. I remember it being very enjoyable and liking it a lot. In the way of mecha design, I'm not that into the ashtrays, though I could definitely see the appeal. And if I ever do one, it's got to be the perfect grade red frame. That's just a killer kit. Oh, I put that on upside down, so I need to pivot that around. Needs a bit of moisture. It's a bit too dry, so it's not adhering to the surface very well. Triangle button. I bought a high-grade Gypsy Avenger the other day out of curiosity. Those kits, was it Pacific Rim? They're generally very much like your standard Gundam high grades, though the added detail and articulation is quite out there. They're very, very well designed kits. I see Bandai's going crazy on buying all the popular mecha IP out there from Star Wars and retaining Gundam and all that sort of stuff. Though they are quite solid kits with a tiny amount of work and whatnot. It's a rewarding experience to play with them. I have the PG Red Frame Ashtray Kai Limited Edition on pre-order at the moment. So the Kai, that's the one with the two swords, if I remember correctly. So it's got two katanas or whatever tiny little extra bit. That's been out before, and when that one came out, pre-orders and sales and whatnot just instantly sold out. It's a very, very popular design. So for Bandai to be rehashing that, not surprised at all whatsoever. But yeah, no, the perfect grade. If I was ever to do a perfect grade, and if I was ever to do an ashtray, it's that one because it does look very menacing and cool. My mate who does the really good color theory and hand painting, he did a perfect grade ashtray. But what I'm likely to do with the perfect grades is due to how expensive they are. I'm hoping one day I could find someone who's built one, doesn't want it, and wants to get rid of it really cheap, so I could just pull it apart, clean it up, paint it, and put it back together without building it from starting runners. That would be quite a saving on money. I almost bought a Neo Zeon of someone for about $60, $70. So they bought it, they built it, they snapped it, they hated it, they wanted to get rid of it, though someone else ended up buying it more than me. Though, mind you, the Neo Zeon is it's a gigantic, menacing, awesome-looking kit. No, it's a terrible kit. It's got giant nubs. It's got a lack of detail for its size. The seams just look absolutely revolting and would be an absolute killer to remove. So you've got some big decals at the bottom. So if anyone happens to look underneath, that would look interesting. We've got the V, like the side. So that's a bit of a tribute there. And the number 0. Might put a little something small there. And yeah, that would be it for the bottom decals. Now we can start playing with some of the big righty decals and locate them right underneath the V. This might be a silly question. There's never silly questions. Very happy to address anything. But if I paint a transforming kit like the Zeta, will the part scratch if I try to transform it? Yes. Transforming kits or moving parts are generally, when Bandai mills their molds, design their kits, they're all designed that they're pre-colored, you chuck stickers on them, and they're marketed as assemble, play, transformable toys. Bandai does not really work on kits in the mind that they're going to be treated like scale models. That's why there's no tolerance, there's no water slide decals, nothing like that. Where when you look at things like the Pacific Rim kits or the Star Wars kits, they're treated as being gluable, paintable kits by more adult scale modelers. So they have a completely different engineered tolerance. And Bandai does things by the standard tolerance for working parts, which is a gap of 2 microns or 0.2 mil. Paint is a lot thicker than that, and when you plaster on both surfaces, they're going to scratch. So there is ways around it. What you can do is when you assemble it and you keep playing, you keep transforming, you see where parts are touching, and if they're too close, that's when you start removing material. Use grinders, Dremels, pla plate, whatever, to create that gap from 0.2 mil to much wider, where they're able to clearly pass each other. It is possible to do. It is a bit tricky. You start off with something a little more basic and then you work your way up to it, though just working your way up to it. The best way to explain it is, let's say a kit has a piston. You've got the large bit, you've got the small bit, goes in and out. The model has articulation. You can see the piston open and close. And that piston is so tight, it's literally scratching the actual bare plastic because there's just no tolerance. That's as easy as pulling the inner part of the piston out and putting your knife in the hole and twirling it around to remove material to make it much wider, or a drill to open it up by 0.5 mil to a whole mil. So when it goes in and out, it's really, really loose. It's still going to have that articulation, though you're not scratching paint. You paint it, you put it in and out, it works out. I did that in my Greys video. The RE or 1100 Iron-Blooded Orphans Greys. And I had some parts that were very close, that were touching, that had potential for paint scratching, as well as a few pistons and stuff in a frame. And what I did was I hit some of those areas that are touching each other with a very high grit sandpaper, 40, 60 grit sandpaper, and I just kept sanding and sanding and sanding until with a set of digital calipers, I've noticed that there's been enough of a removal of material that the dimensions have changed, the chamfers have made smaller, and then I kept hitting that spot with different sandpaper, 800 grit, 120 grit, 200 grit, 380 grit, 500 grit, 1000 grit, 2000 grit, even probably hitting it with a bit of primer and sanding it back until it was smooth again. And that was at the point where parts can slide against each other or transform and change and still will not scratch paint. So that is highly possible to do. It's just the effort you're willing to put into for that sort of project if you want it to be transformable or not. Though what normally modelers do is stick on one transformation or one mode, model it with that in mind, and leave it at that. But that's the two options that you definitely have to play with and achieve, I guess. I hope that answers your question. But yeah, I've done one transformable kit ever, and I modeled it to retain its transformation process, which was the high grade Archer Gundam from 00. That was a revolting kit. It had a few joints that was so weak that near the polycap, the arms would snap off from about less than a mil of plastic that went into a very, very tight polycap, and it was sort of an elbow joint. So what I had to do was remove a ton of detail in the arm to thicken the little arm insert, which was done with a less than 1 mil strip of brass that went over the bit that slid into the polycap. And that modification took approximately 2 to 3 hours to do, so that polycap was maneuverable enough to activate that aspect of the transformation. I brass pinned one other point and removed some other detail elsewhere, and I managed to have that kit able to do a flawless transformation. So probably it was about a total of 5 to 6 hours extra, but that was a very simplistic transformation kit. So yeah, that's if you're doing something like the 1.0 Master Grade Zeta, that's a bit different. And then you've got the Bandai Macross Valkyrie stuff. Those things are they're an abortion of the kit. The amount of work that would take to make that suitable is near impossible, or it's just that much work it's almost not worthwhile for the detail there is. So I put that there, but I think I want to put the other decal first. So that was a bit of a mistake, but that's not too much of a big deal. So we'll put the smaller decal on, and we'll have 2 loose decals that's floating on a fair amount of water. If you put too much water on a surface, you can have decals floating there for a fair amount of time until you decide to place them where they go. Get them to touch with a get them to be touched with a bit of tissue. It soaks up all that water, and then they start to dry immediately. If there's way too much water, the decals will just continually float and will not stay at a certain spot. Thanks, no problems. Glad to discuss that. So I got a tissue, and I'm just touching the surface, and I'm seeing the water get soaked up, and it's changing color. Remove the decal, which is a shit. And then as soon as I go off camera, this will all get clear coated. So there we go. And if anyone asks during the stream, there's a tiny dot here is because I accidentally stabbed the decal after putting a decal set on it. And that has frustrated me, and they would just need a drop of white paint and that would be fixed. If it was a multicolored screen printed decal such as Natasha or something, it would truly be ruined. Luckily it's only a single color, so I have to be... Is that a decal on my finger? No, that's just some weird sheen or something, so that's alright. Thought I might have accidentally removed a very small decal somewhere. I do have to scan it with the eyes every now and then to make sure I haven't damaged anything or moved the placements of anything. Some of these white ones is just really not noticeable on this gunmetal surface. And as I was telling everyone else, the whole concept of the design of the decal scheme is yes, real weapons of war and whatnot has warning decals and maintenance decals and all that sort of thing. But with our machines and whatnot, we want to catch attention on social media or competition and stuff. And decals can be used as a way as being placed at certain intervals of detail in an asymmetrical fashion or a non-geometrical fashion, and just catch the eyes and put off the psychology of people have of what they like to look at and what they don't like to look at. And realistically, if the sort of thought you go into the visual design and appeal of a kit, You could put so much thought and design and whatnot. I sat in on a model building course, and there's actual courses out there where a traveling professional modeler, sculptor, painter will go out to an area, invite other people that are like invite only certain people who are known or renowned to be professional modelers or commission painters or reviewers or something, and be called out to come, pay up to $100 and listen and watch another modeler paint and talk about their theory of designing professional painted finished kits to sell at commission or auction or competition or whatever. And this one lady was talking about the theory of the base meeting with the figure, meeting with the sculpt, meeting with the color combination to draw the eye, and move the eye in certain locations. Look at the core section, which would be the chest, the face, draw it around to the interesting detail, learn about the story as your eye's drawing, and then it goes back to meet the eyes. And then when you keep walking, you walk past other models because it doesn't give you that pattern of eye drawing. And normally at a competition, the table is about the height of your waist. You have to bend over to look. If there's a certain amount of models, your back gets sore, so you'll only bend over if the model looks worthy to bend over. And I was just thinking, wow, I've never even thought of anything like that. And I was working on a wargaming thing. It was like a sniper figure. It was on near a bridge or something. And the lady looked at it and she said, you need to make the figure stand on the highest points to go with the theory of the look. And I was like, yeah, but it's a sniper and they're hidden. And wouldn't the story be more appropriate that it's hiding and it needs to sort of, draw the eye in a different formula? And she stopped there and she thought, oh, shit, you're actually thinking about the story of the figure and not just the math formula of catching as much attention as possible. And that's where ideologies are sort of clash. But that's the beautiful thing about the hobby. You collect as many theories and information and ways of looking at models and building models and displaying models. And then you formulate your own thing. You borrow some good ideas from other people, disregard what you don't like, and you roll with it. But yeah, I thought she had some very, very valid things to say, but in the end, a lot of it was more gearing to people who were starting out of doing serious modeling, and a lot of it was pretty basic. And I felt that there's enough information about eye drawing and stuff. I could have eventually caught up with that without paying with the money. So I probably would have been better off if I didn't go, but there was a few things I picked up that did make it somehow worthwhile. Though when they were talking about the politics of commissioning and other things, that led to a couple of interesting videos, and that was probably more fun about the politics and the survivability of being a commission modeler. So the class was meh, but when a smaller group of everyone went out for dinner, and the person who invited me to attend the class also invited me to the secret dinner, and just hearing about all the inside gossip, that was the really interesting bit. And that was the part that made the money worthwhile and drew some interesting information to make videos and content and other bits and pieces. Awesome. Yes. Now, there's been a trend I've been seeing a lot on Facebook with people modeling and painting and all sorts of things, and more people painting and doing different things and all that fun stuff. I definitely approve of. It's excellent. So everyone keep modeling, keep doing their own thing, and it's a whole cell shaded look. It's really stylized, where it looks like it's jumped out of a comic, but it's had the effect of being painted with a texture. So you get the really harsh glint lines that are square shaped and multiple colors built up in a blocky or streaky fashion, like it's really shiny without actually using a gloss sheen coat. And some people do that by drawing it all on with a Gundam marker, and some people paint it properly. And even though as visually appealing and different and awesome that it looks, it's not that difficult of a nerve finish to achieve. There's two elements to it to pull it off. The first one is it's got the very dramatic black edging on all the corners, and the subsections such as panels and edges. And that's as simple as either dry brushing with black or highlighting it with a pigment stick, a pastel pencil, makeup pencil, something like that. So that's really easy. Highlight all edges with very strong black, as thick as you can humanly get it. The second bit is the multiple shades of color, which is normally 3. You've got white for the glint, and you've got a light of that color, a dark of that color. So if, let's say you're painting an RX-78 and you've got that cell shaded effect going on, you're doing it on an SD or whatnot. So you go for the abdomen, you've got the red blocky areas. The high point, you have the glint or a side glint or whatnot. You get a picture of a cell shaded thing that's very similar, or a model that's very similar. You look at a very glossy section that's sitting on your table, like a beer bottle that I just happen to have here, and you can see that where the glints travel and where you move it, how the glint moves around, and you draw that for inspiration. Using masking, and something like blue tack would be appropriate. Paint the model white, that part white, and you stretch out some blue tack, which I should have somewhere around it here. So get some blue tack, and you stretch it out, and it's like putty. You mold it out, and you get your little line, a bit of a sausage like that, and you apply the sausage on the surface, and that is all white. And then you get light red, and you airbrush the light red on, you remove it, you've got the glint, you've got the light red. Then you get a far larger piece of it, and then you sculpt it and you pose it and whatnot, encompassing the white glint and a bunch of the light red. You airbrush the darker red, you pull it off, and then you got that interesting effect. You edge the edges with the pencil, give it a clear coat, and once it's all assembled and you touch it up a bit further, that is how you get your anime cell shaded effect that's going around. It's just how you visually appeal, what layer of color goes, where the glint goes, and masking. Lightest color first, build up. It's actually absolutely insanely easy. I want to pull it off. I'll probably pull it off in a garage kit or something and show it off in video form. So as many people can do it as humanly possible, except for 1 or 2 people pulling it off, and people go, "Oh, that's cool," and then just the trend sort of dies off a bit. Time check, 2 hours. So we'll stick around for 20 minutes, half an hour longer, and we'll call it quits. So I'll put this right on top of the barrel. So it gives a reason for the eyes to look at the tip, and it draws it right over there. It's turning out into a pretty fun stream. I've talked about a ton of interesting topics, and the whole list thing is really working out quite well. I haven't even gone halfway down it. So many interesting things. Another interesting thing that I find that happens on a lot of forums, and it's the whole thing that goes down to social media again, about learning about your hobby and what you want to do and the finishes that you want to achieve. And a thing that how most people pull off most things, it all comes down to opinion. There's like some things that are right and wrong, such as how paints are applied chemically, how an airbrush strips down, puts together, your absolute bare basic essentials. That's there's just a few rules and laws to modeling, and that's that. And you abide them. There's only one way around it. There's always exclusions and conditions and exceptions and stuff. Though the exceptions are normally done by people who have the resources, know-how, and the full control over the medium and the material to pull off the exceptions. So if you're addressing a beginner, you don't tell them about the exception straight away because you confuse them. Though when you're addressing someone who's been around for a while, you do acknowledge those. people will go on and they'll show a picture. I want to achieve this finish, or I want to depict this, or I want to do this, or I want to do that. But they've got no understanding of it. It's one thing to, it's like when you're researching something for homework, and you go, let's say you're gonna research the English Civil War or something, and your first action is going to go on Wikipedia and just have a quick synopsis and rundown. And Wikipedia is renowned for not being a quotable or referenced source for academic or academia and research purposes. You get laughed at if that's your core form of research. But you're also laughed at if you refuse to use Wikipedia, period. Because the beautiful thing about that platform is at the bottom, it's got all the references of where all the information comes from. And going through those references, drawing out and consuming them leads you to the best information for the research that you're conducting. And it leads a chain effect of leading you to more links and more links and more references. And it gives you the terminology and words and cross-reference stuff that leads you to other things. So when you're learning about something, and let's say you want to learn about candy painting, and you see a kit that's being candy painted, and you go, I want to achieve this finish. You'll put up a picture and go, this is very cool. I like the finish. What is it called? What's the go? And people go, oh, that's candy. That's when you put a silver and a clear coat over it. And you go, cool, thanks. All right. You've got the word candy coating, candy effect. And at that point, you can start conducting research. Different types of paints, the bases of paints, application, if it's used outside of modeling or outside of gunpla, its purposes. You can look at the history of it being done from automotive and the use of automotive paints. Other circles of art, when you go very thick with a clear on a candy, it sort of almost gives that lacquered, super shiny gloss look. If it's very, very weak, it's far more metallic. So if, let's say, you look at Iron Man's armor, that is very, very thick, clear red candy to the point where it looks like just metallic red. So if it was a lot lighter, you only put one or two coats, it would be a chrome red. That would be something like, what could you compare that to? Like a clear glass and there's something behind it, like a sensor or a camera lens. So that little piece is applied. I want to put two more decals. We'll put two more decals on for now. These two. And they can go... Can it fit there? Yeah, we'll make it fit. We will make it fit. So you start researching, and the beautiful thing back in the day when people documented model builds, they'd go on forums, they'd start a work in progress thread, they'll title it blah build. Every time they work on it, they'll go back to the thread and they'll put a post of more pictures and what they've exactly done. People leave comments, they leave questions, the questions get answered. And you just read the whole thing and there'll be a whole conversation about the build. You wouldn't have random things or a bunch of memes thrown in or whatnot. A couple of compliments, and the rest of it would be purely about the discussion of the achievements or the criticism, the right things, the wrong things, suggestions. And you read enough about those builds and whatnot, and it sort of just builds up your information base. A lot of forums have died. The servers have been turned off, they've been backed up and that information's gone, though some of them still exist through searching and digging around. Some of them have been archived and they come back and they disappear and they come back again, though Discord is trying to bring that back to life, though the ability to search on it is limited. People who document things in the way of websites and put sort of forum style posts up there will give you information in the way of a text-based picture tutorials that date back all the way to the 90s. are very, very helpful early 2000s. And you've got your YouTube tutorials. So you've got the old modeling masters that have left that behind, and a lot of them aren't even in the hobby anymore. Though the problem is with newer people and with the whole revolution of social media, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and that's the biggest enemy of that information being spread, because whoever's spreading it and retweeting it or reblogging it or whatever is popular. And sometimes popularity can trump what is correct or where experience is formed. So when you're asking a question on social media, you get the terms or the names or whatnot, and then you research it further through Googling and other sources. And there are some modeling sources that are fantastic, and then you cross-reference that, and then you lead to what you want to build. Then you've got the other type of research that is inspiration research. So if you want to build a Gundam, Steins or whatever, and you want to give it the look of it looking like, I don't know, a Roman soldier, and give it some paladin armor, and it's got segmented plates and a few bits of nice detail and some sculpting and stuff. Then you start downloading pictures of references of bits and pieces of other models people done, and some historical bits and pieces, some drawing and fantasy art and whatnot. Pick up some ideas and figure out how you can sketch them out and scratch build those elements and work it into your model. And that could be a lot of fun. A really good platform for getting some fantastic photos from Gundams to other scale models to sketches, drawing, and historical stuff is Pinterest. That's a really, really, really good resource. There is a bit of a strong Gundam and modeling presence there, but it's not really a social media. It's more that people just follow each other, and if someone finds some good resources, other people go, oh, look at that resource is found or developed. I will steal that as well. So there's no conversation on there, but there is a sharing of really good, masterfully built and made models. They're the only ones that really survive on that platform. There's no discussion, but you find stuff there, and it's your decision if you want to keep it, refer to it, and look at it, or just pass and not look at it. And there's a bit of an algorithm that's built on that platform where it finds out the stuff that you really like, and it suggests more stuff like it. So I've been trying to leave a lot of my stuff behind on that, since a lot of my content has been removed from Facebook. So I thought I'd back it up there, and if it's ever looked at or it's not, at least it's there to be kept. Alright, so I just transferred that decal there, and that was a real pain. So what I've done is, there's a really low valley part, and my finger can't get in there to apply the decal. So what I've done is I've applied it on a higher surface, and what I should have done is probably lubricate it a bit more, and I can drag it to exactly where I need it, and now it's sitting at the exact spot that I need it. So that's working really, really well. Even though this is quite an early stream, I've had quite a few people wander in and wander out. So good morning, how you guys going? Thank you for checking out what we're doing here for a bit. Got a few conversation points, a few research points, a few Q&A bits and pieces going on, a little bit of the demonstrating variety. If there's stuff here that you really like and you want to watch more of it, and you wish you kind of caught more of the stream, once videos disappear off Twitch, I back it up on a YouTube channel called the PhD Manchild. I've mentioned this hour and a half ago on the stream. It's my secondary YouTube channel, sort of more of a shitposting platform, and I just did some playful and fun inventing bits and pieces, a little bit of comedy stuff. Eventually, I just didn't really want to play with it anymore, but I use it to back up my Twitch streams, or the really good ones, where it's very talky for the whole time. And that can be used to, listen to background or whatnot. You can cut it, you can steal it, you can repost it. I don't really mind. It's kept around, so that is definitely kind of cool. So that's been applied. I've just noticed, I think I've noticed, did I notice? Yes. I saw the next point for the next decal, and it would be one of these ones. So we'll go right there. And there's a lot of geometric shapes on Gundams, on guns, on whatnot. Very basic. Gundams are notoriously very boring. Lack of detail, chunky, oversized chamfers, rounded edges. As easy as humanly possible for Bandai to squeeze it in a mold, punch it out, and kids to snap it together without poking their eyes out. And our jobs is to play and modify and smith that bit of plastic until it's more visually interesting to look at. There's a bit of crap in there. So the interesting thing with decals is you don't need a lot of the skills to apply decals, though it gives you that little extra detail that's interesting. And applying them to certain points and edges and whatnot, you can just highlight details to draw the eye to. So if there's something that looks really cool and you put a decal there and you put a decal at each edge, if it's a square, you put one at each corner and then you move two of the corners around so it's not so it's a bit asymmetrical, though it's still symmetrical on both sides, and it's not fully geometrical, though it's highlighting where the eyes are being drawn around. And it just makes it that much more visually interesting to look at. And that's sort of like, if you ever looked at the version Katoki kits, his like wing and all that sort of stuff, his special is not really, the guy's a bit overrated. He sort of redesigns what's already there. He's the ultimate fanboy of Gundam designing and Gundam kits. What he does is he plays around with proportions. He makes some areas more slender, some areas more big, and the eyes look at it, and it sort of creates a more of a cute appearance and accentuating the accessories, such as the wings or whatever. And then he places the decals at certain points and stuff to drag your eyes across it and get very excited about it. A lot of the stuff he does with his designs are not really original or special or anything. It's just standard design theory. And it sort of borrows from the effects. You get things like, virtual on kits and older mecha properties. So it's something that's been around for a very long time, and he applies it onto Gundam kits. So we'll put the decals there. We need to put something here. And what that could be is squares. These little squares here. That will work nicely. And that is generally how you can sufficiently improve on your builds, and that's playing with your color separation, the modulation of the piece, and you can either shade, you can weather, you can pre-shade, you can decal, or you can use a mixture of all of them. And the built-up of layers of simple things is definition, and that definition builds up whatever your final project kit or design is. So I think I'll apply these last couple of decals, and that is probably going to have to be the conclusion of things, so I can get other things done. The whole streaming experience is a lot of fun, so I'll definitely be back later on in the week. So that'll be all right. Since we're going to be wrapping up in the coming 10-15 minutes or anything, if anyone's got any questions, things to throw in, ideas, whatnot, give the floor to you guys for a bit. And just any interaction or interest there might be. I'll go to my list. Don't really want to... metallics. Now, what I really like on going on threads and forums and posts and whatnot is someone's doing a project and they want to do something that's metallic or chrome or candy or something. And they're searching for the perfect color, shade, sheen, and the perfect medium that works out for their style, their methods, and whatnot. So they'll buy a whole range of things, and this can sometimes happen on the more seriously scale modeling sections. So they'll buy everything: Molotov, Alclad, Vallejo, the whole catalogue of bits and pieces, and they'll apply it all on spoons. And I've already got a problem with spoons as a test subject, but we won't get into that yet. Or we might, who knows, who cares. So they'll test it all on spoons, and they'll look for the right colour that suits the colour in their object that plays on their model. It might have to be a correct sheen of aluminium or steel for a military subject, so it's historically correct, or at least visually correct by their standards. Or it might be the shiniest possible, or the coolest possible, or the nicest finish possible. And if these finishes can be buffed or not buffed, clear-coated, not clear-coated, whatnot. So they do a test, they share the test, and they come to the affinity that X product is best for their purposes or not. That's all cool and fun, and it's really awesome to see the different shades. Now, my opinion on metallics is, one, the more you can get your hands on of the same type, the better. That's really cool, especially if they're lacquered, you can shade it. I've shaded about 3 different types of 3 different brands of lacquers on this gun. And it might not be noticeable because the lighting's not the best here. Though we've got this Moto silver, and the silver is really noticeable at the top. And then I got a Model Master gunmetal and shaded it and more concentrated at the bottom. And at the bottom, tickled it with a bit of clear black and a lot of clear back at the bottom. So if you look quite light, quite dark, when it's in a slightly better lit environment, it will be far more noticeable. And sometimes you can just do some interesting shading, or you can pick up a little detail, or each modulation can be a different brand of silver or a different pigment of silver. It's something to be very, very playful with, and take advantage of all the different interesting tones and effects. So instead of shaming or rubbishing a silver, if it applies well, if its adherence is good, and if it reacts well with a clear coat and polishes nicely, you do have to be careful with your clear coats with your metallics. Generally, if it's a lacquer, you can just chuck lacquer clear on it and then polish it up. Lots and lots of retardant. Anything else, just Tamir clear or a strong alcohol-based clear gloss, and then lots and lots of retardant, lots and lots of thinner. Allow the maximum amount of time to dry. Oh, that doesn't work there because it's offset by the circle. That's not good there, but it's good there. So there we go. Found a nice spot that just visually draws the eyes. Where was I? Because I was playing with the decal. Yeah, just build up a library and use what's appropriate, because sometimes you got an area like an inner frame and there's just a bunch of silver, and if you paint it in one gunmetal, one silver, or one thing, it's very boring. But if you're going to clad it on with armor and then it's cool. But if you want to expose it, then you need to go multiple tones of different metallics, or you want to shade it, and the higher areas are lighter color and the bottom areas are a darker color. And that is the appropriate time to be playful. And that's the beautiful thing, having about 1,000 brands with 1,000 different shades. Take advantage. Don't just choose the one thing and run with it. And it might be good for one kit or one project, or you only need, a few touch-ups or a few parts. But don't let it restrict you. So we have done decaling up the gun. And generally Bandai guns and Bandai weapons are very boring. Back in the day, what we used to say was if you built a master grade or a perfect grade, you'd sit there and you'd snap and remove nubs and clean up and everything. You get burnt out, and once you get to the weapons, you've got weapons fatigue or for the weapons block. You build one rifle, one shield, you're done, you don't care. You put the rest of the runners in the side or the bin or a bits box, and you're finished. You're just too burnt out to build any more because the Gundam guns are tedious, they're boring, they're uninteresting, they've got big, terrible seams and nubs and all sorts of things going on. If you're building a very big project like a perfect grade or a master grade, don't follow the order to the T to the instructions. Dart around and start at different points, and it keeps you on your toes. It keeps things a little interesting. Build the weapons first. So they're the boring part, and that's when you're the most excited. You build the weapons, you're excited, you're having fun, it's a good thing, it's done, you put them to the side. Then you start to the feet, and you build up, and it's standing. And if you're taking your work in progress photos and whatnot, it's visually more interesting for people to follow instead of the head and the arms and some other weird components, and it's just scattered on top of a cutting mat board. And that just leads to a little interest, and it's a little more fun for you. It gives you a chance to read over and glide through the instructions instead of just opening from page 1, not looking for everything else. And it helps you look out for any potential errors or problems. It helps you analyze and look for any potential scratch building or kit bashing or interest you can do with the project. As I'm talking, I'm running the tissue along the decals to see if there's any moisture to wipe up, because when I turn the stream off, I will be chucking a clear coat on a few bits and pieces. Now, the last decal I applied was still slightly moist, and when I put the tissue over it, you could see it change color and the water just get drawn out like a syringe. Everything else is fairly dry. I can put a clear coat and not worry about weather or other things affecting the decals, and I can come back days or weeks later and keep decaling. So most likely it's the very next time I come home and jump on the stream, I'll want to get working. Now, with the big V decal, we had a bit of trouble with that when we applied it. It didn't contour to the surface and the detail very well. Mostly due to how big, thick, and awkward it was. We put the decal set on it, it wrinkled up, and now it's flattened very nicely. Though, because it's broken down the plastics and whatnot, and it's made as flat as possible to the surface, it's very delicate, and it can damage also very, very easily. So what you want to make sure is you definitely want to clear coat it at this point, and definitely protect the large decal that has been mental block decal setted. And if you don't have access to decal set, you're short on money, a white mild vinegar works really well, but your model will smell like a fish and chip shop for a period of time. So that's all nice and dry. That's once the camera's off, I just go to the next chair and just start airbrushing immediately. Not really set up to show that off at the moment, though somewhere in the future, who knows. Thank you very much for watching. This is the conclusion of the stream. Hope you guys enjoyed it. There's a few guys running around in the chat and whatnot. And yeah, I'll probably be back here either Thursday or Saturday. Catch you guys later. Look forward to the video that I'll have coming out in a few hours' time. Catch you later.